What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Jeff back here with Project Zailas. Long time no see. As always, I do apologize to those of you who are following this build. It has been a hell of a month. June has just not been good for me or my family at all. I won't go into it too much, but my mother's battling cancer, and a good friend of mine passed away. And my wife had her wallet, her credit cards, and her green card, most importantly, stolen. And somebody went off and went on a shopping spree with our credit cards, so I've had to be dealing with all that. And then there's some other things that have just been going on that have, caused me to have to put the project on hold for a little bit, so I do apologize about that. I do have to be honest and say that my project and YouTube and my car and everything has to come second to family and life stuff in general, so that is the case here. I do appreciate you guys bearing with me, but I am back, and I'm back at the project trying to hit this thing hopefully harder even than before. So we're in good shape to continue forward with the project. The last time we left off, it was part 10, I believe, of the wide body build. I was refining the passenger rear flare, and I'm at 99% refinement on that at this point. I was able to get it into a really nice shape and get some primer on it. So what we're left with is we're pretty much at the point where we're bolting them on the car. So let me show you guys first where we're at. I'll show you what the flares look like currently, and then we'll go into what we're going to be doing moving forward here. So first of all, as you can see, my car is still incredibly dirty. It pains me to have to see that the car is still dirty after, gosh, probably 3-4 months at this point, but that stands to change. As of tonight, guys, I plan on having this car out of the garage. Really all that's left to do is just to bolt the things on the car just to check for fitment. We are going to have it back in the garage though, so we can cut our quarter panels. I've not cut them yet, but we do have to do that so we can air the car out and lay it down after everything is said and done. But a little sneak peek here, you can also see that I'm doing a little bit of a little test with the polyurethane flares, the universal flares that I'd used to sculpt the flares in the back. Just a little test fit up in the front there to see what it looks like, and I'm really liking it. Of course, I would definitely have to do some adjustment, some cutting and stuff. I'd probably cut this away right here from this line. I like how this line matches up with the vent line right there. I'd probably just cut that away and just make a nice little curve, or maybe a straight line up through there. I don't know, but I think I'm going to be running with these for a little while. Instead of going in and starting the front flares, resculpting those, or not resculpting, but starting a new sculpt on those, I think for the time being, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and run with these polyurethane flares, just so that I can run my wheels with my rear flares. It's just a time thing right now. It just takes so much time. It's taken so long to get the back ones done that the front ones would take probably at least as long. So I have decided on something with the fronts. I'm not going to go over it right now, but I will tell you guys about that later. For right now though, I think I'm going to be running with these polyurethane flares, but I think it looks really nice. You can see on this side as well, super nice. Now of course they're just taped on there, so they would be adjusted and trimmed a little bit and all that, but anyways, we'll come back to that at a later time. I do have something going on with the front though that I've decided on. Moving to the backs here, here's obviously the flare that we've been working on, that we left off on. Really nice shape, really nice. The refinement came together after a long while. I was thinking it wouldn't take as long as the other one did to refine, but of course turned out to take even longer. This gas cap area changed so much. Having this hole out, it really changed the entire shape of the entire thing. It created flex in certain areas that I wasn't expecting, and I didn't take into account just how much of an effect having a hole right there would have on it. So it really took me a while to get the shape just the way I liked it, but after all the time that I put into it, it's really looking nice. It's super smooth. I've got 2 layers of primer on there, sanded down again. There will be one more layer that I'm going to put on before I go in with some paint, but it's looking nice. You can see the fitment is looking great. It's not bolted onto the car just yet. It's just kind of held on with a C-clamp on each side right there, so it's not flush to the car around the top right here, but it will be. So we're about ready to go ahead and start doing our bolting. And you can see I've already drilled out my mounting holes in the fiberglass. That's already ready to go. They're drilled out to M6, the M6 size hardware that I ordered. That's actually another reason why I had to put the project on hold for a little bit. It's because it took a little while to get my hardware in the mail, but I did get it. And so these are drilled out perfectly to M6 hardware. Now I'm using Rivnuts. I'm not going in with just straight rivets or just straight self-tapping screws or anything like that. I'm doing it the smart way, and that's by using rivnuts. And for those of you who don't know what rivnuts are, basically they are a threaded sleeve that you put into the body of the car itself. It has threads in it that you can then thread your hardware into, which makes the flare removable. It's not permanent like a standard rivet, where if you ever wanted to remove the flare, you'd actually have to drill it out. Rivnuts allow you to just drill into the body, put your threaded sleeve in there, and then rivet that to the car, and then you put your flare over and just thread your hardware down into the threaded sleeve, which makes it nice because we can take the flare off anytime we need to do any work underneath the flare or anything like that. If I ever wanted to wrap the car or do any paint work or anything like that, I could remove the flare, have everything done underneath and all that, and then just put the flare back on, no problem. So it's really nice to use the rivnuts. A little more expensive going that route and takes a little bit more work, but really that's the best option. If you're doing wide body like this, if you're putting flares on it, whether it's Rocket Bunny or Liberty Walk or whatever you're doing, even standard flares like that, go rivnuts. Really, that's the way to go for sure. Now in order to put the rivnuts on the car, I'm going to be using a rivnut tool. That's something like this. This one is by Astro Pneumatics, I believe is the company name. I bought it on Amazon. Comes in a kit like this with, you know, a good selection of different sizes and your rivnuts and things like that. I'm going to be using M6, like I said, which is it's a nice low profile size. I didn't want anything that was going to be too big, that would draw too much attention to it. I don't like too many rivets. I don't want people immediately looking at the rivets when they saw the car. I want them to be more subtle. So I chose M6. It's going to be nice and subtle. You're not even going to really see them stick out above the depression here of the mounting areas. So it's really nice. You'll see it's going to come together really nice. And as for the color of the hardware, they're currently just your standard stainless steel silver, and I do like that. I think it's going to play well off of the carbon silver color on the body, but I may choose to go in and paint the hardware rose gold to match my trim color, which you can't even see under all the dust currently. But I think that would also look super clean with the rose gold hardware in there. But we will see. That's yet to come. We got to get them all bolted on there first, and then we'll deal with what color it's going to be. As for the color of the flares themselves, for now they're going to be matte black. I'm going to go ahead and paint them all matte black after a final primer coat, but eventually they're going to be the same body color. They'll be body matched, the K51 carbon silver, and that's the ultimate goal. But for now I'm going to go ahead and do the matte black. It's going to match the side skirts and match the front lip and the rear diffuser and all that. So they're going to be black quarter panels, black flares, just for now. Probably for just a little while before I take it off to the paint shop and have them body matched. I'm not going to try to attempt that myself. I don't have a compressor. I don't have any real good way to do any spray painting right now. So I'm going to go ahead and have the body shop body match the color and everything when I'm ready. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and do the matte black. It's going to look fine. It'll look really good. In fact, it might look awesome with the matte black. We'll see. My wife thinks I should leave them black, but we will see. Anyways, we got to get them mounted to the car. The C-clamp's holding the bottom there. You can still see a little bit of a gap right there, but as I push it in, that gap closes up real nice. It's going to close up perfectly when I get the rivets in. It's in pretty much the exact position that it needs to be. There will be a little bit of adjustment to be made, but it's pretty much right there. The gas cap area is looking great. You can see we're pretty much flush, as my camera focuses here. We're pretty much flush with the gas cap area. It's really nice all the way around, just a nice solid line. That took a lot of work to get that just right. It really did. I mean, I had to keep on going back and forth to get it adjusted till I was happy. I'm just such a detailed guy that I will not, as I explained before, I won't stop until it's exactly the way I want it, and you know, that's why it took a long time, but it's going to pay off in the end. It's going to look fantastic. So we got pretty much the same situation going on the other side. The other flare is, I went ahead and went back and re-refined the other flare as well, so we're looking good. We got the holes drilled out just the same on this one as well. I also went ahead and reinforced, you can see behind the flare here, this area, about this inch line along the edge of the top of the flare. I went ahead and added an extra strip of fiberglass just to play it safe. These areas right here are very fragile when it comes to drilling and vibration. As your car is moving down the road, it vibrates quite a bit, which can be hell on fiberglass. It can crack over time. So I doubled up on the fiberglass just to strengthen it up along the line there where the mounting holes are. I also put a little extra square right there by that mounting hole just to play it safe. I imagine if you really wanted to go the extra mile, you do that with carbon fiber. Just put a nice little strip of carbon fiber. That way you'd never have to worry about it. But I think for the time being that fiberglass is going to be just fine. All right, so we're doing good on both sides. Looking great. We're super smooth. It's pretty much the same condition on both flares at this point. We're ready to go ahead and start our mounting of the flares. Now, taking a look at the bare quarter panel here on the driver's side, you can see I put a couple of layers of masking tape just along the outline where our mounting holes are going to be drilled into the quarter panel. That's just so that I can do my marking. As I lay the flare up on the car, I will be using a Sharpie marker to mark through the mounting holes so that I know exactly where to do my drilling. Now, before I go in with my drill bit, I'm going to use a punch to just get a little pilot hole started. That's a better bet than just going in with your drill and trying to start the hole and everything just by itself. If you do that, you run the risk of the drill bit moving all over the place as you're trying to push it in, and trying to put a little too much pressure in and then causing a dent or doing something. It's just not a good thing to do unless you have a pilot hole. So we're going to be using like a little metal punch to go ahead and get a little pilot hole started in my mounting areas, and then we'll go in with our drill bit. Now, the actual drill holes that we're putting into the quarter panel will be slightly larger than the holes that are drilled into the flare itself, because the Rivnuts are actually a slightly larger diameter. They're just a little bit larger than the actual hardware itself. So we're going to be drilling a little bit larger holes, putting those into the hole, and then riveting those to the quarter panel as I explained previously. And then of course laying the flare on top of that, and then threading the hardware down through the flare and into the Rivnuts. Okay, we're not going to be doing any cutting yet. This will eventually need to be cut out right here so that we can air the car out and take advantage of that extra width that we're going to be adding with the flare. But I'm going to go ahead and leave this intact for the time being. Once the flares are bolted to the car, I'm going to put the wheels on and get it pulled out of the garage while leaving the car aired up. Of course, we can't air it out or else it's going to make contact with the quarter panel here. But we're going to leave it aired up, pull it out of the garage, check our fitment, make sure everything's looking good, see what kind of fitment, what kind of camber we might need to add as we look at the wheels against the sidewall of the flare and all that. Just do a general, just take a general look at what it's looking like. If everything's checking out and everything's looking good and no adjustment needs to be made, we will then pull it back into the garage, take the flares off, and start the process of cutting and doing all that work underneath here. And then we will have to, of course, bend that second skin up. As I explained in the previous video, there's two skins under this quarter panel here. There's the outer skin and then the inner skin that are welded together at the bottom here. So we're going to end up cutting that off, which is going to separate the two skins, and then we will have to reconnect those two skins and of course seal it with primer and some paint to make sure it doesn't rust. It's very important that you do that. But we're going to be doing that afterwards. Our goal right now is just to get the flares drilled onto the quarter panel, or mounted onto the quarter panel, I should say. That's the goal for today. The goal is to get the car out of the garage. All right, so that's where we are. Let's go ahead and get started with our marking, our marking through our flares on the masking tape, and then we'll start doing our drilling, putting our Rivnuts in. All right, back on the passenger side now. We're going to be starting with this flare first, and then once this one's mounted, we'll move over to the other side and get that one taken care of. Now, I've gone ahead and gotten the flare fully mounted to the car. It's not drilled yet, but it is taped on in the exact position. Now, it's very important that you get the flare positioned in the exact position that you want it to be in its final state. If it is off, if it's not in the right position, if it's mounted incorrectly, then you're going to be stuck with that. Once you drill those holes, they are drilled. So make sure you double, triple, quadruple check your fitment on whatever flare you're doing, whether it's one that you made yourself like this, or if it's a Rocket Bunny flare or whatever. Make sure it's fitting correctly exactly where you want it. So what I've gone ahead and done is I put a little piece of tape in between each mounting hole. As you can see here, there's one in between each mounting hole to really secure it. You want to go above and beyond. You want to go a little overboard on this to make sure that the flare doesn't shift around at all. Because once you drill one of these holes, you don't want the flare moving at all, or it's going to be off. You're going to drill that one, it'll be correct, and then if you didn't notice that it moved at all and you drill this one, well, they're not going to match. So make sure you got this thing locked in exactly where you want it to be. And once it's there, once it's solid and you can kind of try to fidget it around with your hand and it doesn't go anywhere, that's how you know you're in good shape. Okay, so that's where we are with this flare right now. I've got it exactly where I want. I triple checked it. I made sure, especially right around the gas cap, that this was where I wanted it to be. With this particular flare, this gas cap area is God. As long as this right here is lined up along the lines and everything's looking clean, I can pretty much assume that everything else is going to be lined up correctly. Really, it's this area and this corner right down here that are the two most critical areas. As long as this line right here lines up with this side skirt line right there down to this corner, and this gas cap right here is lined up as well, that's how I kind of know on this flare that it's lined up correctly. And I'm just kind of eyeballing around the rest of the edge of the flare just to make sure that everything is looking correct and everything is looking real good. I put my finger underneath here as well to make sure it feels good, matching up with the wheel well as well, so that's fitting well. Everything down here is flush to the body of the car, so that's fitting well. It's in the exact position I want. Also back here, at these mounting holes right back here, it's flush to this line right there, which is where it's supposed to be. So as you can see, I've just gone above and beyond to make sure that it's exactly where I want to be. I do not want to be drilling holes in these quarter panels and then come to find out that, fuck, you know, I just drilled in the wrong position. Because once you drill, like I said, it's drilled. There's nothing else you can do about it. So we are in the perfect position. We are ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and remark each one of those mounting holes, and then I will start with my punch and start punching in a little pilot hole, and then we'll get started with our drilling. Now, of course, this is always going to be the most nerve-wracking moment of any wide body install or any major body work. Whenever you start to do drilling into quarter panels and cutting off and stuff like that, it's very, very nerve-wracking. There's no doubt about it. You know, from the beginning of this project, I really felt like I was going to go all the way. You know, I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm going to build this from the ground up and just go for it. And I still have that feeling, which is really good. I had hoped that I would have it all the way through, and I still do. So I'm really not worried about it. You know, this is my car. You know, this is my car, and it is going to be the way it is, the way that I build it. There's a lot of Z's out there, but this is going to be the only one that is built the way that mine is. So you know, I'm taking that mindset into this as I start my drilling and stuff into these perfectly good quarter panels. That you know what, this is my car, this is me, this is an extension of who I am. For all of my good parts and all of my imperfections, you know, this is what it is. So taking that mindset into this as I start my drilling, and I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to finally get these things actually mounted to the car. All right, so let's get to it. Alright, so I've got the holes punched out, a little pilot hole just to get started, and I'm using a very small drill bit to begin with, just to create the initial hole, and then I will eventually jump up in size to eventually the size hole that's drilled into the flare, and then we'll take the flare off once that hole is drilled, and then we'll do just the slightly larger one to get the rib nut in the hole. So we're just taking our time with this. We're not rushing into it. We're doing one little step at a time, doing one small hole at a time, and eventually going up in size until we get to the proper size of the rib nuts themselves. So here we go. Making sure I'm dead set in the center, taking my time with it, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure in here with the drill. I'm just letting the drill do the work, just a little bit of pressure and letting it eat through. I'm gonna pull it out and make sure that's dead center, good. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of pressure at all. It'll go right through. This is not very thick metal, so it'll go right through there. So just take your time with it. A little bit of pressure. You don't want to put a big dent in it by putting too much pressure right there. All right, so moving on. I've officially got holes in my quarter panel at this point. Alright, so we're good for the first half of the passenger side flare. Let's move on to the back. This one's trying to move around on me a little bit, so I'm just going to put that hole in there just a little bit more, just so it has a little pilot hole exactly where I want it to go. I'm using an awl and a rubber mallet. This is an awl, it's got a real sharp point on it. This is a rubber mallet. There we go, that should be sufficient. Alright, so we got all of our pilot holes drilled all the way through. Everything is nice and centered. One thing I did come to realize is that along this ridge right here, just below the tail light, there seems to be 2 layers of steel right there. So it was a little harder to get the drill bit down in through these areas. Really just along this line, and then along the edge here in the back too. It took a little extra pressure to get through there. So I guess there's 2 layers of steel that go in through there, or some support brackets or something like that. So if you're designing a flare, or if you have a flare that comes up to the taillight line like this, just keep in mind that you'll have to put a little extra pressure to get through that reinforcement right there. Other than that, it was fairly easy to get through. This metal is not very thick at all, and especially through the bumper area right here where I had to drill into the bumper, the drill bit just goes right through. So just keep in mind, you don't need a lot of pressure at all, even through this area right here where you need a little extra. Still, you don't need a lot. Don't just be jamming that thing in there, or else, you know, you run the risk of first damaging your quarter panel, putting a dent in it or something like that, and secondly, having the drill bit go through the hole and then slam into your fiberglass flare or whatever it's made out of, and cracking your flare. So you don't want to do that either. Just let the drill bit do the work, and just put a little bit of pressure and let it sink in until it finally goes through. So now that we have our pilot holes all drilled, it'll be very simple to just go ahead and switch up to a little bit of a thicker drill bit. That'll be the actual size of the mounting holes here, and then we're just going to go right through there. Once we have those sizes drilled out, I'm going to go ahead and take the flare off the car and go in with the final size up, which is going to be the size of the rivnuts themselves, and then we will go ahead and proceed to use the rivnut gun, or the tool, to go ahead and rivet those the rivnuts to the quarter panel. Alright, we have got the flare off of the quarter panel at this point. Now we're going in with our final size up on the drill bits. I've already gone ahead and done the first one, so I'll show you guys exactly how big the holes are going to be for the rivnuts. That's this size right here in comparison. This is how big they were for our pilot holes. And then we expanded it up to this size right there. As I said, my rivnuts are M6 in size. They look like this. So it has to be exactly the same size, or just slightly larger is okay. If it's just a little bit larger and it moves around a little bit, that's okay too, but you want it close. Now, I've got it exactly the same exact size, to the point where you just kind of have to push it in there a little bit, and that's exactly how you want it to sit right there, where it's flush up against the body of the car. And then we're going to go ahead and use our rivet tool to go ahead and crush that into the metal so that it's nice and tight in there. You don't want any play. If there's any play in there after you use your rivet tool and crush it into the metal, then you want to go back in and crush it a little bit more, adjust your tool, and that will vary depending on the tool you're using. It will vary how you do that, but you know, just read the instructions or look online. Anyways, you want your rivnut really nice and tight in the metal. So let's go ahead and continue to drill out the rest of these and get our rivnuts installed, and then we'll get this flare on here. I'm so hyped, guys. This is looking dope. Perfect. So as I always said, you don't need a lot of pressure. Let the tool do the work, especially as you get in toward the bottom. As it gets ready to puncture through, it will grab that metal and pull that drill in really quick. So you don't want to be pushing in there really hard, or else it's just going to go all the way through. Your drill is going to hit your quarter panel. It's going to dent, or it's going to pull out. So be real gentle with it. Expect a little bit of pull as you get in toward the end of it, but as long as you're gentle, you'll be fine. It's not going to flex too much at all. The other thing that you might want to consider as you're drilling here is as you drill into the metal, it's going to put up some little spiky edges around the edges. And so use like a file, like a metal file, something like this is what I'm using, to go in and file that down flat. If you do get any kind of bending at all, if it pulls it out at all, just use like a little tap, little plastic, you know, like a little plastic tap, something like this, and a rubber hammer. I got these out of a PDR tool set, dent removal set, so I just use this to kind of tap it in just a little bit, and that usually does the trick, no problem. But let's finish up all the drills and get it all filed down, take all this tape off, and get these rivets installed. Alright guys, so with the holes having been drilled into the quarter panel to the correct size, we are now ready to go ahead and install our rivnuts. Now I've gone ahead and done a few of them already just to get the feel of it. This is my first time ever putting rivnuts in the quarter panels, so I wanted to do a few before I threw it on the camera. So this is what we're ending up with. Really nice clean result. It's very easy to do. This tool is great. As long as you don't overdo it with the pressure, you're going to get a really nice result. So this is what you're looking for, a really nice flush rivnut in there that doesn't move around. It's completely stable. I've done these three right here, this one, this one, this one, and this one so far. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure at all. You just get it in the slot and you just compress the two handles to get the squeeze on the metal, and it gets in there really nice. I had to go ahead and increase the pressure on a couple of them because there was still a little bit of play the first time I squeezed it in there, and it's no problem at all. There's just a little adjustment knob. I'll show you what it looks like when we're putting them in. You do want to be careful a little bit not to put too much pressure, as it's very possible to overdo it and actually start bending the metal or warping the metal as it's pressing the rivet into the metal. So don't apply too much pressure, just a little bit at a time until you get it completely rock solid in there so there's no play. Once it's solid, there's no need to continue applying pressure. Just put enough so that it's solid. Alright, so let me demonstrate how this works. I'll put in the rest of the rivnuts, and we are super close to bolting this flare onto the car. Could not be more excited. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and apply a rivnut to this hole right here. I've got the rivnut itself. It looks like this. It's got some gnarls on it at the top, and that's really good. You can get some without the gnarls, but you want to make sure you get the ones with the gnarls so it doesn't rotate in the hole. You want it to be in there rock solid and not move at all. Because if it rotates and you try to get your screw in there like this, it's just going to rotate around and you're going to have trouble trying to get the screw in fully. So what you do is you take your tool, at least if you're using one like this, I imagine there's other ones that are similar and they all probably work pretty much the same, but with this one we're just going to go ahead and thread the rivnut itself onto the threads on the top of the tool, bring it out so that it raises the top of this. This is your starting position. Then I'm going to thread this all the way down into the base, and once you see a little bit of threads coming out from the top, you know it's ready to go. If I compress these handles, it's going to crush that rivnut down. Okay, so you want to make sure you don't press this until it's in the hole. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and push the rivnut into the hole here, and then once it's fully flush to the body, I'm going to compress the handles down to get a nice crush between the rivnut and the metal there. Again, you don't want to overdo it with the pressure. I've found with these three that I've done previously that it takes one full compression, and then I come out with it and then adjust it just a little tighter, and then just a little bit, maybe about a half more on the compression to get it nice and rock solid in there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in. So again, you make sure it's flush into the body. Okay, we got a nice flush all the way around, and I'm just going to do one compression. Try to compress both handles together at the same time if you can, if you've got a tool like this. Then I'm going to see if there's any play in it. Doesn't look like there's any play at all, so I don't even need to add any more pressure to this one. I'm going to twist this counterclockwise to remove the tool. You guys will get a better look on the next one. No play at all, so that's all we need to do. Alright, so we've now installed that rivnut right there. Little zoom up on it. No play at all. I can try to move it around and it's solid. There's no warping of the the metal around it, it's perfectly fine. We didn't use too much pressure, and it's enough pressure to keep it from moving around. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Same exact procedure, arms out. We'll thread this onto the top until you see just the thread sticking out of the top right there, and you're ready to go. Get some stuff out of the way. Get this flush to the body, all the way in there, and then try to compress both handles at the exact same time. And you should feel a nice crush in there. Check to see if there's any play. No play at all. Good. I'm going to unscrew it just like last time. Really not difficult to do at all. No play. Nice and centered. Excellent. Same thing with the next one. Flush with the body. Even pressure. Perfect. No play. And remove the tool. Perfectly solid. So that's looking excellent. We'll go ahead and do this bottom one down here. Excellent. Perfect. All right, I'm going to rinse and repeat and do the rest for the back portion, and I think you guys get the picture. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not hard to do at all. I actually didn't think it would actually be that easy, but it really is. So cool, we're moving along. I'm going to go ahead and do the backs, and then we are so close to getting this flare on this car. All right guys, so just like that, our flare is installed. We've got all the hardware now screwed in. We got all the rivnuts installed, of course. Put the flare on the car, all the holes lined up beautifully, with one minor exception, and that was with this little corner right down here. I'm going to have to expand the hole by literally like 1/8 of an inch, not even 1/8 of an inch, just a tiny little bit. I mean, it fits. You can see the hardware's it's fitting in there, but I don't want to tighten it. It's not fully tight in there, not fully flush, and I don't want to tighten it anymore for the risk of cracking the fiberglass, so I'm not going to take the chance on that. I'm just going to expand the hole a little bit and then just tighten it up really flush. Pretty much every other one on the flare though is sitting flush or 99% flush. I'm using right now about an 1/8 inch little rubber washer that I actually made for each one of these. It's rubber, so it gives. It doesn't quite put too much pressure on the fiberglass, but I may expand it and get a little thicker washer. Just so that it doesn't have to sit in so tight. Each bolt doesn't have to sit in so tight. As with any fiberglass body panel, you always want to make absolute sure that you don't tighten too much on your hardware. You only want to go hand tight, if that. I mean, as soon as you start to feel it tightening up, you need to let off on it. Definitely don't use power tools to tighten these down. I'm using a little Allen wrench like this. This is what my hardware requires, and they're just hand tightened. That's it. Down to right when I feel it start to tighten up a little bit, I let off, and that's it. If it's not sitting fully flush, then I know I just need to get a little bit larger washer. Now the flare itself is sitting fairly flush to the body. I'll let you see here. You can see there's just a tiny little gap in a couple of areas. Can't even hardly see it on the camera, but there's just a little bitty gap along the edge there, just because there is that little, probably about a 1/16 of an inch gap that the rivnuts actually create in between each mounting point. And so with this little gap here, I mean, I could let it go. It's not even that big of a deal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get a rubber seal that will help me to eliminate some of that gap right there. And I think that's going to be perfect. I actually already have the rubber seal. I ordered it quite a while ago, actually, in preparation for this moment, because I kind of assumed that I would get a little bit of gapping. And so I did order it rather. And it's a little dusty now, but I do have it here. This is by Bushwhacker. It's a rubber seal that I will put around the edge to see if that helps to tighten up that gap. I think it will. I think it's going to be absolutely perfect. I actually tested it when I first got it in the mail, and it fits perfectly around the flare. So I'm going to use a little bit of that, maybe just along the top portion of the flare to close up that gap along the top curve right there, and maybe just along this portion right here as well. We'll see. It's looking great. Even if I didn't add the rubber gasket at all, I think it would look absolutely perfect just the way it is. I'm just going to expand that little hole on the front one right there so I could seal that nut up a little bit. Everything else is perfect. Remember, if you're doing this for yourself, hand tight, don't use power tools. As soon as you feel it tighten up so that it's kind of giving you a little bit of trouble when you're trying to tighten it, let off, don't do any more, you're gonna crack your fiberglass. I think we're in perfect shape. Everything is looking really good. The gas cap area is perfect, as you can see there. It opens and closes just fine. Yeah, man, I'm totally stoked. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I just did on the driver's side, and then I'm pulling this car out of this garage. It's gonna be out by tonight. I am so stoked. I'm gonna finally be able to wash this car, get all the dust off of it. We are moving along, guys. Got one flare attached fully at this point. I'm so freaking hyped, man. I'm so hyped. Thank you all for following this build. Hope you're all as excited as I am to finally see this car get out of the garage. I will update you guys as quickly as possible. I'll get another video up very quick of the car out of the garage and what this looks like. Thanks so much for watching this. I'll see you guys on the next part. Peace.